In just 2 years, the number of people in the world facing acute food insecurity jumped from 135 million to 345 million in 2023. How can technology and other innovations help to address this situation? I speak to Lorin Fries. She's the founder of FutureTable, and she's an advisor on food and climate solutions.
I met Fries at the Consumer Electronics Show, the largest consumer tech conference in the world, held in Las Vegas. Fries hosted a panel called New Voices in Future of Food.
Food is something that is so intrinsic. I mean, when we think about the greatest moments in our lives, it's a banquet, it's this, and it's so integral, but the food systems in some ways are broken, aren't they? I mean, can you talk to us about the food systems, the way they are?
Yeah, as you say, they're integral to everything we do. Every time we eat, we take part in a food system, and by that I mean we're part of a web of activity of production and distribution and retail and storage and composting, but we're also touching other things like climate change and water and people's livelihoods and climate change. So food systems are so complex and so interesting, and we are involved in them just by virtue of eating every day, multiple times a day. Now, you say food systems are broken. I'm going to push back actually to say our food systems are working in certain ways, but not in others. We actually designed our food systems over the last several decades to optimize for yield and calories, specifically to optimize for filling bellies of a growing population, and to do that efficiently. So we optimized for calories and efficiency. What we didn't optimize for is nutrition and responsibility. And so I would say the food system is working, but not in the ways we need it to work. And if we think about the ways we need it to work, we think about the future of food systems and what are the big challenges that we need to solve. I see basically 4 areas that we need to solve for. The first is around nutrition. We have about 735 million people in the world who are hungry. About half of the global population can't afford a healthy diet. So we have major issues around nourishing the global population. Second big issue is around the environment, and specifically needing to have a more regenerative food system. We know now, we've known actually for many years, that our agri-food systems, as they're called, contribute to 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions overall, and 70% of fresh water withdrawal. So we've got a huge impact in the way that we currently conduct our food systems, and that needs to change for the environmental sustainability of the planet. Third big issue is around equity. We're sitting here in the United States, rich, industrialized, technologically powerful nation. You would think we probably don't have any hungry people here. We have 44 million hungry people here, 13 million of whom are children. Smallholder farmers across the world are some of the world's hungriest. So we've got huge issues of inequity. And fourth big challenge is actually around resilience. Over the course of the few years of the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine, we saw 112 million more people pushed into hunger. And that's because of the fragility and the lack of resiliency in our food system. So we need to solve for those big challenges: nutrition, regeneration, equity, and resilience.
Fries is the founder of FutureTable, advising leaders on the use of technology and other solutions toward a better food system. She's also the strategic lead for Blue Climate Initiative. Fries recently worked as head of food systems collaboration at the World Economic Forum.
Just seems like there's so much information coming at us. It's like a fire hose, but this issue doesn't seem to get as much attention as it deserves. From my estimation, I suspect you probably feel the same way. What is it? How do you break through the clutter to make this like top of mind as an issue?
I would say 2 things. I would say one is that I think it is breaking through. We saw a record year in 2021 for investments in the food tech sector. It was an enormous year in that sector. So there's really been a crowding in of innovation, of mission-oriented young companies trying to solve for some of these challenges through the marketplace. And that is worlds different than how it was 5-10 years ago. So we're seeing a lot more talent, investment, energy going into this sector. But I think you're right, Mike. I think the complexity of this challenge means that people might shy away from it. But I think the more that we actually link food to some of the existential challenges of our time, the climate crisis, they're intrinsically linked. People are increasingly waking up to the climate crisis and how important it is, and how food is a lever of solution making in that crisis, to our global health crisis, to the obesity and the chronic disease epidemic, to the water scarcity on the parched planet that we live on. So a lot of these issues, I think, are bringing into focus food as a solution, as well as food as an exciting place to work and to offer our energy and talent.
You seemed excited as you talked about the technological advances. What do you see out there on the landscape? What excites you?
Right, so there are so many. I wish we could talk about them all day. So maybe I'll cluster them in those buckets that we talked about before, and we can start with nutrition. One area that's being talked about a lot is being referred to as blue food. And by that, I mean food from the sea. You've got your big fish like tuna and salmon, your small fish like sardines, or your bivalves like mussels and clams. And there's been a lot more attention paid to blue foods because they're a more sustainable environmentally and a more healthy, in many ways, form of protein. And we need to solve for protein challenges. And you can farm fish in the ocean in ways that are sustainable and actually regenerate ocean ecosystems. They capture carbon through seaweed. They rebuild fish stocks. So there's some ways of doing that in the ocean that don't contribute to the overfishing population. There's also aquaculture, which is on land, and you're cultivating fish closer to where a lot of people live. There's advanced technologies that can help us with some of the challenges we see in that industry, like animal disease. There's underwater sensors or underwater computer visioning that can help us deal with those challenges. And then actually an interesting part of the blue foods solution area is seaweed, which is not generally seen as particularly sexy, but it actually has gotten a lot more attention and investment as a solution, not just for the ecosystem properties that it contributes to. Again, I mentioned it's a carbon sink, it's a plant that captures carbon, but also for human health and nutrition, it's delicious. It can be fed to cows to reduce their methane emissions, which is a really interesting solution space, and it can be used as bioplastics. So seaweed is cool, blue foods are cool. So that's one interesting solution space around nutrition. Maybe I'll crowd in one more, which is around essentially food as medicine is the term that's being used, and that's also personalized nutrition is a term that's also used in association with the advancements that are being made in biology and the sort of intersection of biology with our understanding of the human microbiome and the products or the food sources that can be addressing personalized nutritional needs. Now, right now, most of the products being developed are sort of for affluent customers. They're a little bit niche, but I think that the scientific advancements that we are gaining through that biological revolution are going to bring us to a next level of understanding about what human bodies need and how we can really address those needs and close that gap that has been there between the silos of food and health.
One of the latest advancements in sustainable food production involves the rise of vertical farming. This innovative method allows crops to be cultivated in vertically stacked layers, often within urban environments. By utilizing advanced technologies such as hydroponics and LED lighting, vertical farms can maximize crop yield while minimizing land and water usage.
Lorin, talk to me about your journey through food. I mean, how did you get on this road?
Gosh, when I graduated from my undergraduate degree, I sort of looked around the world and said, how can I be of service? And at that time, there were over 800 million people in the world who were food insecure. And I thought, this is kind of outrageous. We sent people to the moon in the late 60s. We do these extraordinary innovations every day, and we still have this many people who go hungry every day. So I really latched on to food as a topic that I wanted to work on and started working on it from a humanitarian point of view with the US government, and then in Uganda with an organization called Save the Children, and saw firsthand just how challenging those food security issues are, why we have so many millions of people food insecure, and frankly we still do. And then I got really interested in the question of climate change, because even at that time, this is 20 years ago now, farmers in rural Uganda, farmers in other parts of East Africa, they already knew the climate was changing. They were already experiencing the increased drought or the more severe floods that was telling them that something was changing. And so understanding that we had a major crisis that was emerging and that was overlaying on food, I just thought, this is my issue. This is how I want to serve, how I want to show up to the world.
Another development in sustainable food is the growing popularity of plant-based meat alternatives. With concerns about the environmental impact of livestock farming, many consumers are turning to plant-based proteins as an eco-friendlier option.
There are other buckets. We had a chance to chat beforehand. Kind of walk us through a couple more.
Sure. So I mentioned these 4 big challenges. We talked about nutrition. So let's talk about environmental regeneration. There is a lot of hype around the so-called alternative proteins space, and that means a lot of things. So let me break that down. It means, in one instance, a more plant-forward or plant-based diet, and there's a lot of cool new products being developed there, a lot of investment going into that space, a lot of people choosing more plant-forward diets that move away from animal-based livestock. And one of the reasons for that is that increasingly, as consumers wake up to this interrelationship between climate and food systems, they're learning that currently the way that we produce livestock, that's your beef or your chicken, contributes to half of all the greenhouse gas emissions of the entire agri-food sector. So that's a huge weight on the planet. So diversifying those protein sources, not necessarily telling someone what to eat or asking people to switch overnight, but diversifying the options that people have is cool. And so plant-based is one of those options. Another option that your viewers may have heard about is the so-called cultivated meat space, or they may have heard of lab-grown meat. And there's a lot of interest in this. There's a lot of investment flowing into this. There are steps forward and steps back around this space, but it's essentially taking a cell from an animal and growing that cell in a lab such that it mimics the meat, but it's not actually raising and slaughtering an animal. So it's a really interesting way that we're mimicking that animal and the taste of it and creating a protein that some consumers may prefer. And then a third one gets a little wonky. It's called precision fermentation. It's essentially using bacteria, fungi, yeast, et cetera, to create other products. So these alternative protein sources, I think, are really important alongside, frankly, more sustainable methods of growing the livestock that we do choose to eat. So whether it's feeding seaweed to cows to reduce their methane emissions, whether it's actually introducing insects as a source of animal feed, which is another big space that is attracting a lot of attention and investment and that is more sustainable in many ways than other things that are being fed to fish and to land-based animals. So lots of activity around this space, lots of potential in that alternative protein space.
Globally, millions of tons of food are wasted each year. Apps like Too Good To Go connect consumers with surplus food from restaurants and grocery stores, helping to create a more efficient and sustainable food system.
So you worked for Save the Children, and now when you think about children, you think of your daughter. I mean, she's 2 years old. What kind of world is she going to inherit? How much of that weighs on you each day?
It's an eye-opener. I have a little daughter. She's almost 2, as you mentioned. I think it brings into focus why I do what I do, why we do what we do. If I think about her 30th birthday or I think about her 50th birthday, what kind of world do we want to design for? How can we anticipate the future of food systems or the future of the climate crisis or health or any other aspect of this and actually design for the future that we want? So it puts into clarity for me why I do what I do. I also think that it can and should invite other people to kind of search in their heart or look in the mirror in a different way and say, do I want to put my talents more toward global challenges like these and like many others? Can I be more purposeful about the work that I do, sort of doing well by doing good?
Companies are increasingly turning to plant-based plastics, paper-based packaging, and other sustainable alternatives to reduce their environmental impact. China-based Onchong produces cutlery from bamboo, a renewable and biodegradable material. These efforts not only help minimize plastic waste, but also contribute to the overall sustainability of the food supply chain.
Towards the end of the COP meeting there, to have an agreement on methane, and now recently we had Dubai, and it seems like food, again, you mentioned, it seems to get, like I was saying, it's not getting as much attention, but it does seem like now when people are talking about climate change, it is entering the conversation. Did we see any guidance coming from Dubai? I mean, what were some breakthroughs that you saw there?
I do think that this climate conference that happened in Dubai late last year, 2023, was a breakthrough moment for food in the context of the climate conversation. And gosh, it's a long time coming, right? To join those issues, which, as we've been talking about, are completely intertwined. I think the main breakthrough to talk about, there are a number of initiatives launched, there's a lot of investment flow, a lot of excitement happening there, but I think the real breakthrough is that 159 countries, including most of the world's largest agri-food emitters like China, the US, Brazil, Argentina, the EU, came together and issued a declaration that essentially put food into their commitment, their climate commitments, recognized the importance of food as a lever of change and as a solution space to those climate commitments. And so, everything from regenerative agriculture to some of the other solution spaces that we're talking about. And the reason I think that that's important is not only because food is finally a centerpiece part of the climate conversation alongside energy and transportation, et cetera, but also because food and agriculture and food have a superpower. And in the context of climate. And by that I mean they can go from being a net harm to a net positive. And so when I talk about regeneration, I'm not just talking about getting to zero. I'm not just talking about getting to neutral harm. I'm talking about drawdown. I'm talking about sequestering carbon in soils or planting more trees and being able to sequester carbon in those, or having more stable ecosystems because of that. If we do agri-food systems right, we not only produce enough nutritious food to the planet, we actually solve the climate crisis.
One final question before you go. Because this is such a huge topic, I mean, just going back to the beginning of this conversation, do you find yourself optimistic, or are there just so many challenges? I mean, it just seems so daunting on so many different levels. But do you find yourself optimistic, and do you think technology is going to be a driver for a source of optimism?
I do find myself optimistic, especially when we direct the ingenuity, the investment, the creativity of people like technologists, like venture capitalists to this space, right? People talk about technology for good. Absolutely. Engineers solve for X, right? If we make X regenerative food systems, if we make X equity in food systems, we can do extraordinary things. And people want to put purpose at the center of their careers a lot of the time. And we have enormous talent, enormous flows of money coming out. So can we harness that technology for good? Can we put these challenges in focus? I think we can, and we are increasingly doing that, and there's much more opportunity to do so. I will say that along with doing that, we need to involve the folks who are closest to the challenges. It can't just be folks in the industrialized nations of the world, the global north, the traditional folks who have gotten the investment. We know here in the U.S. that VC, venture capital flows in very minimal amounts to women, for instance, less than 2%, to founders of color, even less than that. So we need to actually pay attention to whose ideas are getting supported, whose ideas are getting invested in. We need to build innovation ecosystems around the amazing entrepreneurs who I know in Ghana, in Nairobi, Kenya, in Kigali, Rwanda. I'm just picking Africa as an example. So the who matters and the what matters. So where we can harness innovation for a purpose, then we can solve anything we want.
Well, that sense of purpose, undoubtedly a core fiber of who you are. Thank you so much for your insights.
Thanks,
Lorin
Mike.
Fries.
This was
a
fun.
real pleasure.
Thank you.